Hey y'all, welcome back to Voices of the Body, the podcast. My name is Love Ashley Elaine, and I will be your guide as we continue on this journey of just learning and understanding our body's voice. This particular episode, we're going to be sitting with Miss Elizabeth Ann as we really talk about grief and what that looks like. We talked about miscarriage, we talked about stillbirth, we talked about pregnancy loss, we talked about domestic violence all month. We want to be able to talk about grief and what it looks like in those spaces, right? That it's okay to grieve a child that you've never met and to grieve a relationship that didn't turn out the way that you intended it to or thought it would. So, you know the vibes. Prepare your mind, body, and soul. I'm so tongue-tied already. As we get into this episode. One of my favorite things to have at home with me when I need to just unwind and relax my mind and my body, or when I'm in those really deep healing spaces and just need something to bring me back to center, are candles. Vintage Essence is a Black woman-owned company that specializes in candles, wax melts, and car diffusers. I also love my car to smell good. VE's goal is to provide you with items that make you feel comfortable and relaxed and that make your home your jam. Who doesn't want their home to be comfortable? Who doesn't want their home to feel safe and smell good and to feel cozy? Go to vintageessenceco.com and use the exclusive code that was created for our listeners, Voices15, to get 15% off your order and become a candle cousin today. Listen, y'all, my favorite candle is Hookah Lounge and Rest Your Cakes. I was able to get some samples of Rest Your Cakes. Hookah Lounge was in a sample box that I got that Vintage Essence did during Valentine's Day. I brought myself a cute little Valentine's Day candle set and brought myself some flowers. Ladies, don't ever think you can't buy candles for yourself on special holidays also. Beautiful scent, long lasting, just like filled the room so quickly but so softly at the same time. These candles were definitely made with love, definitely with prayer hands. It's like the candle knew exactly what I needed when I needed it. So don't forget to use code VOICES15 at vintageessenceco.com.
Soundstripe.
I want to invite you to just find a space where your body feels comfortable. Find a space where your body feels relaxed. Find a space where your body is able to let go and receive. And I invite you to, if you feel safe in your body and in your surroundings, to bring your gaze down your nose or to just close your eyes altogether.
Soundstripe.
And pay attention to any parts of your body where you feel like you're tensing or tightening or gripping.
Soundstripe.
And with that awareness, give yourself permission to let go. Softening the gaze, softening the jaw, softening the back, softening the shoulders, softening any grip that your fingers might have, softening the tailbone, the buttocks, softening the thighs, softening the calves, softening the feet,
Soundstripe.
and softening the neck, allowing it to just be relaxed.
Soundstripe.
And as you begin to allow your body to soften, bringing the awareness and focus and attention to the heart space, the chest space, the shoulders. Can you allow yourself to soften the body but keep the heart open?
Soundstripe.
When you allow yourself to keep your heart open, you begin to examine within yourself what you need to remove, what you need to let go, what visions and touch points, imaginations, thoughts, feelings that once were, without judgment, allowing yourself to have permission to let go. To really clean out anything that is being held on to that no longer serves you.
Soundstripe.
Grief is a space that we all need to engage in and be aware of.
Soundstripe.
Because change is inevitable. Grief is inevitable.
Soundstripe.
So ask yourself, what do I need to sit with
Soundstripe.
that will arise within me what no longer belongs with me?
Soundstripe.
What do I need to sit with that will allow me to grieve and let go, but also congratulate and be thankful for the person that I was before this experience came that brought me into grief? What do I need to sit with
Soundstripe.
that is within me that I can look at and touch and heal that will transform me? When we allow ourselves to grieve, when we allow ourselves to really feel the depths of what it is that we need to feel, we feel the love that we had or still have for that person, for that moment, for that place, for that space, for that child.
Soundstripe.
And over time, we allow ourselves and our body to be back and home, to feel the good of those things, of that experience, of that person, and say that if I had to, I'd do it all over again, because it allowed me to see something different within me. It allowed me to touch deeper within myself,
Soundstripe.
to transform into something bigger and greater. And take a big breath in and release. One more big breath in and release. And one more
Soundstripe.
big breath in and release. And we will be right back.
Soundstripe.
Anybody that knows me knows that Coffee is my thing. I wake up in the morning, I get me a cup of coffee. I also truly enjoy teas. Teas are so healing for the body, mind, body, and spirit. Ocean Royalty Healing's mission is to lead through transparency as a vessel to inspire healing. Each of their products are made with pure love and with the intention to provide emotional healing. Whether you're indulging in one of their herbal tea blends or their thoughtfully crafted intention oils, you do so with so much joy. Ocean Royalty is here to offer physical, spiritual, and emotional healing through the curative power of energy healing, herbs, and crystals. Try any of their products at oceanroyaltyhealing.com for 10% off with the code Voices of Ocean. May peace and blessings reside with you always. And when you say healing energy, I can feel it, right? I never use products that I don't know where other people's hands are, because healing comes from the hands. And these teas, amazing. I got the lavender chamomile tea to drink at night. And when I tell you the lavender is so potent, it hits you. And you, like, before you even take a sip, the lavender coming from the cup with the nice steam when it's nice and hot. My eyes was ready to fall asleep. Like, my eyes were closing just off the smell. Like, I was about to fall asleep with it sitting in my hand, right? And it also tastes so good, so good, so good. It's so pure. You can taste the purity in this tea. I've also used I still drink the Goddess Womb tea. The Goddess Womb tea, I highly recommend, ladies, and men. You can buy this for your ladies, right? To help ease cramps during our cycles, our moon cycles, after our cycles, right? To help bring blood flow back in, to help clean out anything that needs to be cleaned out, to keep our wombs healthy, ladies. This Goddess Womb tea is packed with vitamins, iron, magnesium, and antioxidants, and it's made with red raspberry, nettle leaf, hibiscus flower, orange peel, and rosehip. After I had my miscarriage, I was told that red raspberry, well, I Googled what I should eat, what I should drink, all those things. And I haven't stopped drinking red raspberry tea. Red raspberry tea has been a saving grace. So this Goddess Womb tea is really good for clearing out any of those energies, right? Really restoring the womb and restoring the body. Our creativity comes from that space also. So go ahead and head over to oceanroyaltyhealing.com for 10% off with the code Voices of Ocean. And welcome back to Voices of the Body. So, to finish off the month of really just diving into pregnancy loss, miscarriage, and infant loss awareness month, as well as domestic violence awareness month, I have the beautiful and intelligent. She's so sweet, y'all. I met her at church. She's such a beautiful lady with two just amazing daughters. Miss Elizabeth Ann, how are you?
I am good. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
So, Miss Elizabeth Ann has a profound love for God. Yes, she does. She wears it in her smile and her speech. She's so graceful, y'all. She has given her heart to loving God has given her his heart, excuse me, to loving unconditionally with no judgment and an innate gift of listening to hurting hearts. She is an empath and a highly sensitive person, which allows her to feel, relate, and connect on the deepest level. With that being said, she coaches people through all seasons of life, especially the difficult and confusing ones. She has worked as a licensed minister for over a decade and is also certified as a life coach and has completed counseling courses with the AACC. She's certified in trauma healing by the Trauma Healing Institute at American Bible Society through Quest Movement and is a grief recovery specialist through the Grief Recovery Institute. None of those qualify her to minister to your soul as much as the experiences that God has allowed her to suffer in preparation for all of us. Being a recovered victim of narcissistic abuse and other emotional abuse and trauma, she is passionate about working with people who have suffered from similar kinds of abuse. She works collectively with you, facilitating the restoration process back to wholeness. Such a beautiful, such beautiful work. And thank you so much for doing this interview. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story, just all the things, all the things.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. You are
So
a beautiful person. You make it easy. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you. I like a sacred space, so I try to put out what I want back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I feel it.
yeah. So tell me about your experience. Like what led you into doing this amazing work?
Well, first, I thought it was the death of my father and how that manifested in so many different ways.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought it would be a great thing to share among to share with people. We first started doing grief share at Shiloh with Tracy when her mom died,
Mhm.
and we went through that process. But then I decided to go further because there's also complicated grief where people deal with grief beyond what they can handle.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go and find out what is this grief, and it's more than just crying and being sad, and there's so many dynamics, and just understanding those dynamics was something very important, not only for my own healing, but
Mhm.
to share with others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like how you said complicated grief, right? Because
Mhm.
we associate I think society we only associate grief to like a physical death, right? Like a person that
Mhm.
we've seen
Mhm.
every single day and then they literally pass away, mind, body, all of it, right? So when we
Mhm.
get into complex grief or like that complicated grief, right? When we think about, myself and other women who have experienced a miscarriage, right? It's like we never saw the baby, we never got to hold the baby, but there's still like a loss there. And even sometimes for myself,
Yeah.
it's like I wish I could explain why I feel this way. Or sometimes it's like I don't understand why this hurts so bad or why, this is so heavy, even though I have a living child and I've never held this child, right? Talk to
Yes.
us about like that complicated grief, like what not what makes it complicated, but like what is that beyond what, the societal norm of grief is?
Yeah. It's so much, girl. But just addressing what you just even addressing what you talked about.
Mhm.
when you when you conceive that child, that child is already part of who you are. God
Yeah.
says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. He knew
Mm.
you before you were conceived in your mother's womb.
Yeah.
That child is already real,
Mm.
living in your womb, and you spend 9 months carrying this child, talking to this child, having hopes for this child, envisioning what this child will look like, what this child will do, who this child will be, how you will nurture this child and love on this child, all this stuff. And you start as soon as you know you've conceived this baby, you're talking to the baby in your belly. You've formed a relationship, a deep relationship. And that unfulfilled dream, unfulfilled reality, it's your hope is dashed,
Yeah.
your your reality is crushed,
Mm.
um, because it was a reality. The child was real. Um, um, and we assume that, oh, you didn't see the baby, you didn't have a relationship with the baby, but yes, you did. You started that relationship when the baby was in your womb. Just because you couldn't physically see them, you could see your belly growing, you could feel that
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
So it's real and it's deep, and that's why you mourn. You
Mm.
mourn what could have been.
Yeah.
We don't only mourn what was, we mourn what could have been.
Yeah.
And that's why people in divorce who have been divorced mourn, because they dreamed when they got married and said I do. They were so happy. They had hopes for their life together, for their family, and then their hopes are dashed because life happens and people change and circumstances happen, and we are always evolving, and so the person you married may not be the same person that you say goodbye to, and you say goodbye because they're not the same person you married.
Yeah.
And so you grieve what was, or what you hoped and what you hoped for. You
Mhm.
grieve what you had and the hope that you had, that would expand into this beautiful thing, as opposed to come crushing down
Mm.
and leaving you completely broken, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
um it's a hope that has not been fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's that's tapping into like being honest with yourself, right? About your
hmm
thoughts and your feelings
hmm
and what you like, the expectation, right? Because
yeah,
as much as we want to say, oh, I have no expectation, it's like you really have, like you
hmm
internally do within your heart have an
yes,
expectation of being a
yes,
parent and being a wife and seeing all these things, and then what we see out in society on social media, all those things. um yeah, wow, that's powerful. It's like a heart expectation that's kind of been like
yeah,
shattered. Yeah.
yes,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Never
yeah.
thought of it that way. It's like no, because grief is such it's so interesting. It's such an
Yeah.
interesting like wave of things, and it's like, what do you think it is why people want you to just kind of like rush through it?
First of all, because they're very uncomfortable with your grief. people
Yeah.
people like it. They come to you, they flock to you when you're the popular girl, you're doing fun stuff, when you're happy, you're drawing people to you. The moment you're uncomfortable, the moment you're in pain,
Mm,
that is too close to maybe their own pain that they're hiding, that they don't want to experience. Um,
mm,
and so it makes them push away from that, right?
yeah.
And so they want to fix it quickly so that they don't have to experience that. Or they
Mm,
want to move away from you until such a time as you are okay, and they'll keep checking in and saying, "Is she better now? Is she better now?" But with grief, it's not that you get better; it's that you adapt and change,
mm,
um, and flow. Uh, the other thing is, we want to rush people through grief by using, and we'll go and jump right into that
mm.
religion, talking about, well, you're a person of faith, why are you crying?
Whew.
Why are you crying like you have no hope? But what you're doing is you're curtailing their grief. um,
Mm,
you're complicating their grief. What did I say? I said the first thing I'll say is, let people cry. We
mhm,
say, let us not weep as those who have no hope. In that sense, we are prolonging healing for these people and are spending time we're spending time trying to make them strong, when it's the weakness and it's the pain and it's the crying that'll bring them to that place of acceptance and healing, right?
mm,
and
mhm.
and 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 so we see in the Bible Jesus wept. He cried over Lazarus, whom he knew he was going to heal, right?
Yeah.
Uh, why did he cry? Because he was moved by his friends, Martha and Mary, and the Jews that were weeping over the loss of Lazarus.
Yeah.
He was moved by their pain. He didn't condemn them and say, "Stop crying. Don't you know I'm God? I'm going to heal you." No,
Mm,
he wept with them. It
yeah.
was a real emotion. He understood their pain, and then he raised Lazarus from the dead.
Mm,
I mean, if God could cry, why do we as humans try to stop a process that is real? That
yeah.
we were created to laugh, to cry, to experience all forms of happiness and pain,
Mm,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Happiness and pain coexist, right?
Mhm.
Because we live in a fallen world. God, that's not how God created it, but this is where we are because of the fallenness of the world. Pain
Mm,
entered,
yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so God had plans through Jesus to stop what Satan started. and so we have hope in Jesus now, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it was never his intention for us to be in this kind of pain in the
Yeah.
beginning when he created Adam and Eve.
Mm.
And so a lot of people say, well, God, why did you do this? Why did you let this happen? What, we're blaming God for our fallen world. He's here he says, I will be with you in the pain. What did Jesus say? In this world, there'll be pain and suffering, but
Yeah.
take heart, I will be with you. He didn't say he was going to remove you from the pain. He said he was going to be with you in the pain, right? So he
Mm.
understands that we are to grieve. So let us not curtail or sabotage people's grief by telling them don't cry.
Yeah.
Let them cry
Yeah.
and sit with them. Don't be uncomfortable. You don't need to say anything to the person. You just need to sit there. Your physical presence or your letter or your card that I'm here if you need me, that's all they need.
Mm-hmm.
Just a presence, not you trying to stop it, fix it, plug it, whatever we do when we are uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Whew.
yeah.
And that makes me think about when you if the now because everything you just said, right? Especially when you mentioned like the world being in pain and God telling us, right, that there's going to be sorrow, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
think about like a mother when it's time to give birth, right? The
Mm-hmm.
contractions, the pain, the
Mm-hmm.
things that the
Mm-hmm.
body goes through in order to birth a baby, right? I think when and I believe there's only a select few in the world, right, that are handpicked, that favor, right? Those the chosen one. I'll make your name great, right? That know how to transmute their pain and
So
and
it's
give
not just yeah,
and give birth
yeah,
to something greater from it.
right.
Yeah.
I think that all women know
Yes.
how to. It's not. It doesn't require just your faith.
Yeah.
This is a. This is the way God created us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women were to give birth when Eve was kicked out of the garden. She was told, "You're going to have pain when you conceive," right? That
Mm-hmm.
was not his original intention, but that's what happened as a result of sin, right? So
Right.
we all experience that.
Yeah.
But what you're saying and alluding to is that when you are a person of deep faith, when you are a follower and walking and trying to walk in that obedience, just um, gleaning and growing in Christ, right?
Yeah.
Abiding with Him. When you're abiding, that's the word. You're abiding with Him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the pains that you feel, the whether it's birth pain or just pain from hurt, because
Yeah.
we are humans and we hurt each other all the time. The pain that you experience through hurt, especially the dark night of the soul, and we talked about that one before. That pain has a transformative power.
Yeah.
You elevate and ascend into another realm altogether. You are now in a space where God is you are sitting with God in those heavenly places. Not that you're better than anybody. You get what I'm saying? I'm
Right.
just
Right.
saying that there is a deep level of understanding,
Yeah.
that and growth that
Mm.
comes from that pain when you no longer see things just on surface level or even the second level, third level. You see dimensionally. You're able to transcend some things and see things in a very different light where you're other than self. What prevents us from seeing is our selfishness, right? Our ego,
Yeah.
us.
Mm.
But when you've gone through that pain, you've let go of that ego, you've let go of all that stuff that hinders you from seeing God and doing what being walking in obedience. Then you start to see how God intended us to see, right?
Mm.
And it's through those pains, those
Yeah.
those growing pains, that we see that beauty from, what is it, uh from ashes to beauty.
Yeah.
Is that the saying? I should
Yeah.
know that. Yes.
The beauty from the
And
ashes.
so
Yeah. It's okay.
yes,
I just said it in another episode, so it's fresh on my brain.
yes, listen, so that thing right there. Yeah. So And even with children, you push, and mothers forget, why do they have a second and a third and a fourth? Because the beauty that they produce from that pain is so much bigger than the pain, that they
Yeah.
really want another one and another one. Because when you watch that childbirth, you're like, whoa, no, I won't be doing this again. And if you ask them that day, they'll probably tell you, no, we're not doing this again. But
And
then
we end up doing it
afterwards,
again.
we end up doing it again, because we created, we this beautiful thing came out of us, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's and so sometimes I'm asked, would you go through what you went through again? And I said, if it brings me where I am today with God, yes, I would. It
Mm-hmm.
was ugly, it was painful, but if it was to bring me where I am today, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go through it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh yeah, I like yes, yes, yes. Because and even like thinking about my situation, right? Like because I know my love was so genuine and
Yes.
authentic, right?
Yes.
And my
Yeah.
only hope is to, and not just with this person, with people, period, is to see them win, particularly
Yeah.
in this relationship, right? It was like, God, I see past all of this. I see past
Yes.
the anger, I see past the rage, I see past the violent, like I see past all of this. I want you to see
Hmm.
it in you too, right? But you can't make a
Hmm.
person see those things.
No.
um
No.
so when it comes to domestic violence, right, I feel like
Hmm.
that was also a very hard space to grieve, and it still is for me. Because
Hmm.
again,
Hmm.
like with my story, there's I was grieving, well, I'm grieving the loss of my son no longer living with me, right? And then even with that, some people
Hmm.
are like, oh, but he's still living. Well, yes, he's still
Hmm.
living, and I thank God for that. Both,
Hmm.
and I'm the only parent he's ever lived with.
Hmm.
I'm like, it's old, like he's never lived anywhere else without me. I've never, like, since I've been a mother, I've done nothing else without
Yes.
him, so it's like
Yeah.
trying to also refine myself
Yes.
as a person, right? Who am I outside of that mother hat? And then
Yes.
the domestic violence between my ex-husband and I,
Yeah.
that being a loss, even though he was still living, and what happened was not okay, and then the miscarriage. So it's like grief back to back. But when it comes to like the relationship piece, right, I just find it difficult sometimes to really grieve that space, or move past that space, not grieve it, but move past it. What is it about domestic violent relationships that people also don't want you to like really grieve in? It's almost like, oh well, girl, he treated you like X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z, like he did X, Y, and Z, you need to just move on from it. And it's like,
Hmm.
I see that logic, right? Internally, it's
Hmm.
like, I'm like, there's like two different roads that are just like, well,
Yes.
yeah, like let's
Two
dive
things. Two
into.
things. Two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
And so, yes. So you created you had a relationship. A relationship was birthed, uh, and you loved deeply. And then you found out that the person you loved was not who they said they were. But then at the same time, people become who they are based off of their own traumas and things that happened to them. And so instead of looking, well, especially when you're an empath, and I know you are, and I know I am, and you have an eye that allows you to see past uh, what they're showing you. You see what happened to them.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
know, and so what you're trying to do is take them back to that place, that other, the starting point, and say, but you have this in you, this is what happened. So if we could just go past that hurdle, that trauma that you experienced that made you make a core promise to yourself that you are never going to allow anybody in your heart, that this is what people deserve, is this is how I get love, by hitting on this person, by whatever. This is how I show love because this is how I was shown love. If you look at a lot of men who they were beaten, or they watched their mother being beaten, or this is how they grew up and this is what they think love is. And some of them, it's a direct correlation to what they experience, right?
Yeah.
Even if they don't think this is what love is, it's like almost like a reactive behavior based on what they know, rather than that rather than what is right. But you being an empath also can see past that. And so what we have to learn is our boundaries, because God created healthy boundaries. What we try to do is take on God's work and be their savior and try and help, but we can lose our lives trying to do that, right?
Yeah.
Staying in a
Yeah.
situation that because you can see a person's potential,
Mm.
you have to pray for them and let God take care of that. Feel your own feelings instead of feeling your feelings and their feelings, because that becomes really confusing. When you're feeling your feelings and you're feeling their feelings and you can't separate those two, that's when you find yourself staying in a relationship that's harmful to you.
Yeah.
Because love is love. Love, you fell in love with a person and you can't say, okay, I'm stopping loving, I stop loving you now because you manifested into this person that hurts me.
Yeah.
No, love is seeking, oh, but I know you have this, it's a belief that I know this is in there. I've seen glimpses of this. I know you have this ability. I'm going to stay here until it comes out because we refuse to give up, right?
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, it's not for us to do, and you really have to do some work with God and with a therapist, who actually knows. You don't need to be in a place where you're accused. You need to be in a place where you understand your patterns and understand that you cannot save anybody, and that it's healthier for you to be on the other side than in the storm with the
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the things that I've been working on, and definitely something my therapist and I are working on too, is boundaries, right? And there's a space
Yes.
where I can say, I honestly don't know. I don't know how,
Mhm.
to do some of that, right? Because
Yes.
I was never shown how to do that. I was like, it's like boundaries. What's that? The only thing I learned about boundaries was in basketball. You go past this line, the ball is out of bounds, right? But you know,
Yes.
even in that analogy, I'm grateful to be in a space where I played basketball, because a lot of that translates into real life. Same thing with yoga, right? This is
Yes.
this is my mat, this is my space. And I get to protect that. I get to sit here and stay on my mat while you stay on yours, and there's no competition in what we're doing or how we're doing it. Um
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you touched on
And
like mhm. Oh, go ahead.
I didn't know what boundaries were, until I had a conversation with my therapist, and we studied this book, on boundaries, by Dr. Henry Cloud, I think,
Mm,
and somebody else.
mhm.
I'll give that as a reference later. But then I began to understand that God did create boundaries, that boundaries are biblical, and that what I was doing was a codependent behavior,
Yeah.
where codependency will really kill your boundaries. And if you have a tinge or even a portion of people pleasing, that'll kill your boundaries. Lots of things will kill your boundaries. And worst case scenarios, if you are never taught what they look like. We're
Mm,
taught physical boundaries. Don't go there because you'll get hurt, or don't do this because but we're not taught about emotional boundaries.
right.
And those are the biggest ones. We get hurt emotionally all the time because we do not have emotional boundaries.
Yeah.
We just allow everything good and bad right into our space.
Mhm.
And we need to have those boundaries. God created them for a purpose.
Yeah. And even like bringing up people pleasing, right? Like
Hmm.
there's this thing, like, and I think, sometimes I get confused with it, but I'm also like listening to myself, like listening within, listening to God's voice when he says, okay, give to that person, or,
Hmm.
don't give to that, or, don't give, like whatever that looks like, right? But there's this
Hmm.
thing
Hmm.
in there's this thing where it's like, oh, if you don't give, then you're selfish. And it's like, well, not that I'm always looking for something in return, but it's like, well, I
Mhm.
can't, like, I've had to learn also, I can't give what I don't have any more of.
Exactly. You need to be poured into. You can't pour out of an empty cup.
Yeah.
And so you can't always be giving. You have to allow God to pour into you. What we also have to realize is that we have to really spend that time with God because He's the only one that can pour into us the way we need to be poured into. People will
Mhm.
fail us all the time. When we have, you talked about expectations earlier. When we have expectations of our friends, of our family, of people, they will let us down
Yeah.
because their perspective and their way of viewing the world is different from ours, even though we are, we all have different motivations, different things that motivate us, right?
Mhm.
And so they may be giving you the best that they know how, but because you give differently, you're expecting what you give, but you're not going to get what you give because it's going to look different. And
Yeah.
does that mean that your friend or your family is not giving you all they got? No, it just means that it looks different.
Yeah.
And so who's going to fill this deficit? God.
Mhm.
And so we have to abide, back to abiding. He says,
Yeah.
I am the vine, you are the branches. If you are not connected to me, then you will wither and die. And
Mm.
this is true. We will
Mhm.
wither and die if we're thinking we're going to be fed by people. We can't be fed by people.
No, yeah. I'll never forget in Easter weekend this year, I was
Mhm.
laying in bed and like I always know when God is speaking to me, right? Like I always tell
Mhm.
people like that's the voice you want to hear. And he always catches me when I'm asleep, but it's like that in between, like I'm about to wake up, but I'm not awake just yet. Like, and I'll never forget, he said to me, I am not pleased with the way you've been treating Ashley. And my first reaction was when I heard, like I remember my reaction was just like, oh, he's about to get on so and so. And then when I heard him say my name, I felt convicted. And I was just like, ooh, oh, wait, you're talking to me. And I was just like, okay. And I couldn't get it out my head. I couldn't get it out my head. And from that moment on, it was like, you know what? I have to learn to say no. Because if I
Yes.
don't, this person will continue to just take and take and take, and I will lose
Yes.
everything. I won't have
Yes.
anything left for me. So that's what
Yes.
prompted me to, really like dive into my yoga practice more and do my own healing, going to Peru, going to Costa Rica, because it was like I need something for myself. Even shopping, like
Yes. Yes.
I shopped a lot, but it was just like I need to have something for myself. I really need to
Yeah.
have something for myself. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was it. That was just like a moment where it was like, okay, nobody else is feeling this well for me. Like I
Yeah.
have to do this for myself.
Yeah.
What does like the well feeling look like when you're also experiencing grief, and like maybe like the beginning trenches of it?
You have to surrender, girl. You
Yeah.
there's no, you when you are in that throne of grief, there's nothing you can do for yourself. But what we have to understand is that God doesn't expect us to do anything. He just expects us to surrender to Him and just cry. Lean into that pain. We're afraid of leaning into that pain because we think it'll overtake us. It won't overtake us because God is gracious
Mm,
and kind and loving. And so He will hold us. And so you've heard when they say grief is like waves. It comes, there's high moments where it's intense and it's like labor. Because
yeah.
if labor was just intense all the way through, boof, shit, nobody would have a baby.
None of
Now
us
we
would
would
be here.
remember that if it was,
Yeah.
we would remember that. But because it's if the contractions come, then they go down. They come, then they go down. Same with grief. The intensity comes and goes, comes and goes. So we're able to ride it.
Yeah.
Um, and if all you can do is just lay there and cry and then get up and do the next best thing, don't hold yourself don't be so hard on yourself. If
Mm,
you can't brush your teeth that day, girl, just don't brush your teeth that day. If you can't take a shower that day, just don't.
yeah.
Who says you must? You are grieving, right?
Mhm,
Just don't go
mhm.
out and hang out with people if you haven't taken a shower, just making it
Right.
light. But or you
Please
haven't
don't.
brushed your teeth. But but really, no expectations of yourself, but all expectations of God, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
He's the one who's going to bring you through that. And
Mhm,
so, and those times, I would cling, really cling to Him, really cling to Him. And also, people get angry with Him. That's the
mhm,
other side of that coin. Like,
mhm.
why did you let this happen? Why did this happen? And you know what I have to say about that? It may be unpopular, but it's like God didn't let anything happen. And you go read the book of Job, um, were
Oof.
you here when I created the world? No.
Mhm.
So why are you going to tell me what should or should not happen?
Yeah.
And go back further and think about creation. That's not
Mm,
what God created. That was not God's intention. But
yeah.
this is what sin has brought to the world. And
Mhm.
so now we are living in that space where we will experience pain, we will experience sorrow, we'll experience loss. But how do we go from there? How do we live from that space? It's like you learn. It's never going to be the same. That's the one thing. It's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's different. It's
Mhm.
going to be different moving forward. But so now you have to come to acceptance and then learn to live in this new different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like you're losing an arm. So now you have to learn to just work with the one arm that you have, losing your sight. You
Yeah.
learn new ways of seeing that's not with your eyes,
Mhm.
you know um, losing your voice. You learn to communicate with your hands. You learn sign language. You learn a different way of communicating. Same with grief. There's a different way of living after that person is gone. It's
Yeah.
never going to be the same. We
Yeah.
want what was, but what was is lost. It's lost with that person who is lost. And um, although we will experience happiness and all that, it it talks about, God says you will have joy. And what does joy look like? What is joy? Joy is a feeling of good pleasure and happiness that is dependent on Jesus rather than on who we are and what's happening around us, right?
Mhm.
So you can have joy even in the midst of your tears and your pain. There is a joy. The joy of the Lord is our strength, right? The joy of the Lord is our strength, and that's why we can keep going, because we have His joy.
Yeah.
And joy doesn't just look like happiness all the time. Joy looks like tears. Joy looks like you're sad. Joy looks different
Mhm.
based on different moments and different times in our lives. Um, but the depth of your grief, that somebody said, however much you love that person is however much you're gonna grieve that person.
Whew. About to be sitting in
And
grief for
yeah.
a minute. Oh, I'm about to be sitting in grief for a minute. I'm just being honest here. And another in one of the interviews I had with Alicia, who talked about her first pregnancy loss, being a stillbirth. She
Mhm,
mentioned that, and that's one of the things I highlighted. And when she said it, I've never heard grief that way before. So
mhm, mhm.
hearing you say it again, it allows me to give myself that much more grace, because
Yes.
I know that my love for this person is real. I know that, everything that I feel for this person is real in spite of, you know what I'm saying? Like, in spite of
Yes.
everything. And then you connect that
Yes.
I lost this person and a child that we created together. Like, some
Yeah.
days I'm like, okay, I'm fine. But then other days it's like my whole family is gone. That's what it feels
Yeah.
like. It feels like I just lost my whole entire family.
And you lost it as it was, as you knew it, as you wanted it, as you hoped it to be. You lost it. That is a real point of grief.
Yeah.
And I will never. I used to be one of the ones who didn't understand why people who were abused went back to their abuser, or who continued loving and crying for somebody who hurt them so badly, but now I understand
Mm-hmm.
because you loved that you can see glimpses of that person. You loved the person has the capacity to be who they were created to be and also be this other person simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so you see the person who they were created to be because they show you that
Mm-hmm.
at points in time. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always bad, or you wouldn't stay there. There's bad and good. It's
Yeah.
just that the bad overweighs the good. So
Yeah.
you love the good. And so I understand how you want to stay connected to the good, but you can't. That's where the boundaries come in because you can get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's hurting you over and over again. It's just like peeling that wound over and over again. And you're subjecting yourself to that. And that's why God will say to you, Ashley, you're not treating yourself well. You know,
Yeah. That was loud and
you're not
clear
being
when
kind.
he said it too. I was like, okay, all right. Does that mean I can spend money on me? Because God knows I like a good
Ah,
sale.
yes, yes. Listen, people use shopping or people use eating. I've been known to use eating to hide all kinds of pain,
Mhm.
or to kind of try and it doesn't help. It just makes you feel worse because you just keep getting bigger. But it's a momentary a moment of satisfaction for
This is true.
a lot of a lot of distress, a lot of
This is
distress and disappointment. Because when you look at yourself, you're like, shoot, that doesn't fit me anymore. Okay, next, on to the next thing. And you're like, what? So what am I gonna? I'm gonna see. This is why we need to go to the well that
yeah.
Jesus talked about with the woman at the well. Remember her
Whew.
when she was looking for something in all
Mm,
these men, these
yeah.
husbands. That were none of she was married to none, but she was with all these men, and Jesus said, I am the living water. If you drink of me, I
Never
will
be
give you
thirsty.
something that you will never be looking and searching again.
Mm,
And so when you drink from that well, and that's the well I'm trying to drink from,
yeah.
um, because that's the only well that keeps me full.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, as we were talking about the different kinds of grief, there's so many. Can you imagine children? It's so important to talk to our children about what's happening w- with their grief, how they're feeling, and
Mm,
that it's okay for them to feel this way. It's okay for you to be sad because this person's gone, and all. Because I remember talk about unprocessed traumatic grief that affects you all your life.
mhm.
And so I'll give you an example. I have an aunt who died when I was 8 or 7. She
So, in the midst of recording this episode, the internet decided, nope, we don't want this conversation anymore. Of course, when things are talking about healing and freeing people from what is keeping them in bondage, there's just spirits out there that don't align with, the good stuff. So, we did finish the conversation, and here is the rest of it. Okay.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
I'll continue. You may not have heard that piece, but where she had been in a terrible car accident and died, my aunt that I was waiting for, right?
Mhm.
And she never came back. And I I was in shock, and I just watched people. I was too young to process, except I knew she was gone, but I didn't process what. I just felt sad and I felt the pain, but I didn't process it, right? It was almost like I was in a movie and I was watching something, an out of body experience. But fast
Mm,
forward to today, I have a fear, and that's what I think I had said that on the recording. But I have a fear every time anybody I love goes out driving, like my children,
mm,
especially. Your children are your heart outside of your body. And so they go out somewhere at night or whatever, and I'm just like, I have to pray about each and every time they get in their car to go somewhere, I have to pray because there is a fear.
yeah.
Um, that fear, heaven forbid, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
a fear that they will
Yeah.
not come back. And
Yeah.
so I pray to God that, but I know where that fear comes from. It comes from unprocessed grief.
Mm.
I never processed that grief. And so now I live a life um, with this grief,
Yeah. There's a
and
there's a book that
I've learned.
I started reading called It Didn't Start With You, and that's what she
Mm,
talks about is how
yeah.
trauma is passed along because of And now, like, hearing you say that, it's because of unprocessed grief, right? Like when certain things
Mhm.
happen to like our grandfather or grandmother, and it just kind of sits in the body, right? It's not being
Mhm. Mhm.
dealt with and healed, so it just keeps passing on and on and on and on
Mhm.
and on. Oh,
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And on the other tip, I have this thing. My grandfather, when he died, he made sure there was a big party. He was a brilliant man. Big uh he made he did a lot for my Kenya. That's where I'm
Mhm,
originally from.
mhm,
But when he died, he arranged his funeral before he died. And he made sure there was a DJ, there was a huge party that lasted all night. He paid for everything, made sure there was celebration, and these were his instructions. And
yeah.
so me being young, I danced to Michael Jackson. That's why I have an affiliation for Michael Jackson. I danced all night to Michael Jackson and other songs, but that's the one I remember the most because that was the one that was that those were the ones that were it was really a good time.
Mhm,
And it to the point where we forgot why we were there, because we were there. We were supposed to be mourning, but we were celebrating a life,
yeah,
literally.
yeah.
And even though I missed him years later, I didn't process that grief either. But because of the way he channeled that, I think of when I think of him with joy, and when I hear Michael Jackson, I'm dancing and I'm thinking of him, right?
Mm,
And the way he programmed it so that there were happy hormones running through us at that point,
mhm,
it's very different. And I haven't ever processed what that is,
yeah,
but it's very different from, I remember him happily, even
mm,
though I didn't process that grief.
yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
weird? So grief is a
That's
really weird, strange thing.
Yeah, because then you think about triggers, right? Certain things that
Yes,
trigger those feelings. Like my ex-husband loved country music, right? And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
where was I? Yes, I was in the grocery store this morning actually, and I heard a Florida Georgia Line song, and like it made me smile because it was like a little kid that just like, when he would start singing these songs, I'm like, you're so interesting. Like, so it's like and then like even that sometimes I'm like, well, why does that make you happy? But it's like I know what good moments we had. Not
Yes,
everything
yes.
was bad and not everything was good.
Hmm.
Both, and I'm able to say, do I miss this person? Absolutely. Why do I miss this person? Because of these happy moments, because of these good moments, because of these joyful moments, right? Yet the bad outweighs all of that because
Yes,
it made me feel unsafe, right? So grief is
yes,
is making me learn, right? Just the duality of relationship, along with it's okay for me to miss somebody and also know that I don't feel safe with them.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And
it's
that's the same way
mhm.
sadness and joy is, what not, sadness is joy. That's why God was really smart when he said, of course, God is smart, laughing at myself. But that is why God is God, because, when he talks about joy, there's happiness and sadness in there, right? They
Yeah,
coexist. God
yeah.
knew that. He created
Hmm.
us. Of course, he knew that. But yeah, joy and sadness can coexist
Yeah, yeah.
beautifully.
I think even like grief in like grieving an old version of me, right? Grieving, yes, I think we
Hmm.
tend to pretend like that's not a thing also, right? Even though that old
Hmm.
version of me, I can look back and say, okay, I saw these signs, I saw these different things. This is what I was told. This is what he actually admitted to. And I still was just like, oh, but I trust that this won't happen to me, or I trust that, things will work out, right? So grieving that old version of ourselves, why is that important?
Because it's a loss. It's important because it's a loss. It's important to acknowledge that that is not there. That person was of value. That person helped make you who you are today, regardless of the good and bad that
Mm,
happened in between.
mm,
You're who you are today because of that person. And you would have liked to stay that as that person, but sin happened, brokenness happened, hurt happened. And so
yeah.
now you're this person. But
Mm,
what does God say about that? He says that all things work together for the good of those who are called, right?
yeah.
And so, even though you are not that person, and we grieve that innocence and that pre trauma, pre grief, pre loss of innocence, when we grieve that, but at the same time, who we are today, we're able to help the world. Look at what you're doing. Um,
Mm,
so now you're not only helping Ashley, but you're helping the world
yeah.
through your podcast, through your yoga. Your pain has transmuted into yoga and a podcast and amazing things to come,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's so, even though you grieve that Ashley back then, if she hadn't left, if she wasn't, if she was still there, that's where you'd still be. But
Mm,
what he was here today is complex and beautiful, and God
mm,
can use it to glorify himself and
yeah.
to heal the world.
Mm, complex and beautiful. Oh,
Mhm.
duality is such a beautiful thing. One thing
Yes,
grief has taught
yes,
me is duality, that two things can
yes,
exist at once. Yeah. Oh,
yes.
complex and beautiful. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Mhm,
Mm.
mhm.
What has grief taught you about you?
That I am stronger than I think. That I am stronger than I think. I
Hmm.
never thought I was strong, but it's taught me that I can do anything. And
Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to what God has for me as I move forward. I'm still doing the work
Hmm.
because there is work to be done. You just don't jump from one. You have old ways of being. Like you say, your body remembers an old way of being.
Yeah.
If you, even though your mind may not remember it, your body remembers it, and the two have to catch up. And so I'm doing the work because I'm aware of somatic healing, right?
Hmm.
Somatic therapy. I'm aware of that. It's both mental and bodily
Yeah.
that have to be healed.
Hmm.
And so doing that work, and I'm still doing that work even as I'm healing. I'm a wounded healer, right?
Yeah.
I'm using my pain to heal, but at the same time healing. But what I don't want to do, and hence I'm healing, is cause the people who come to me to stumble from my unprocessed grief, my unprocessed pain. And so I have to process it prior to helping others.
Mm,
And most of all, rely on God. He is
yeah.
my source of everything, girl. I can't start my day without spending that time with him every morning.
Hmm.
Um, it is it's drinking from the water, drinking from the well, and that's what governs my day. And no matter what comes my way, I'm able to do it because I'm doing it. I'm not alone. I'm not walking alone. I'm walking with him.
Yeah.
That's how I handle everything. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's made me stronger, wiser, I think better. It's like, what do we call it? Like fine wine?
Yes. 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 That
The
nice.
older the bottle, the nice aged bottle.
Yeah. That nice,
Yeah.
sweet, bitter taste yes.
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 Um, I think, and you hit on something that I always just like wonder about when it comes to people that work in the helping field, right? I always say if my
Mhm,
pastor doesn't have a pastor, my therapist doesn't have a therapist, my mentor doesn't have a mentor, that it's like I want to know that what you're pouring into me, you've also done the work, right? What it
yes. Yes.
what advice would you give to those that are in the helping field, whether it's like mentoring, coaching, where grief is a thing, right? That grief is inevitable because change is inevitable. But what would
Mhm.
be your advice to people that are in the helping field, doing the counseling, doing the grief work, doing the support groups, all of those things?
Practice mindfulness, self
Mm-hmm.
awareness,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're mindful and you're self aware, you know the days and the times when you're not okay to be of help to anybody. And those are the days you don't. You
Mm,
cancel those appointments and you take care of you.
mm,
Those are the days for self-care, because grieving is a process. You can't rush it because you want to do the job,
yeah.
but you can be mindful and purposeful, and realize, and self-aware, and realize today is not a good day for me, and it's okay. I'm giving myself grace, and I'm going to change my appointments from today to a different day, because today I'm going to work on being there for me. And what
Mm,
does that look like? Does that look like you having therapy, or just you allowing yourself to cry, or you sitting with God that day, or doing a spa day, or whatever it is that you need to do to bring you back to who you are? You just having a good cry, whatever it is, that's the
yeah.
day you do all that. And even if it takes 2 days, you do it, but you know that grief comes in waves. And so you ride that wave, but do not ride that wave with someone on your car.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, don't ride the wave with someone on your car. Take
Mm,
Stop at a stop and let them off, and
mm-hmm.
then ride the wave, and then come back and pick them up. And
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be
Because
mindful. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That was a thing that came up in some of the interviews I've done this month was, like one lady, her first time ever in therapy was because of the stillbirth, and graciously enough, the therapist that she went to said, you know what, this isn't, I can't really, help you through this. I'm gonna give you to somebody else or help you find somebody else. And
Yeah.
if more therapists got out of ego and
Yes.
into their
True
own.
self.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, because I always say
Mm-hmm.
there's that trauma self and there's that true self, right? The God self.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, not sometimes, the trauma self allows ego.
Mm-hmm.
And if more therapists, more of us in the helping field got out of that ego self and into true self, right? Then we can be honest and say, I'm not equipped for that.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
I can't do that. The other lady who was in a domestic violent relationship, her husband shot her 9 times. She's got 3 kids. She's living, so she's like, I gave her your information, by the way. Um,
Oh, thank you.
she went to a therapist. She said one of the first times she went to a therapist once all of this took place, the therapist was started crying, and she was just like, it's hard to find a therapist that is not going to, you know, be so that's just going to be honest and real and, just show empathy. But it's like they don't know how to handle a story like mine. And she's like, I'm trying to figure out if I should like pat the therapist on the back and tell her it's going to be okay, or, so it's like, I think when we don't do our own healing work, we don't understand as healers in this profession that we can do more harm
Mhm.
than help.
Yeah. There's a difference between having an affect with your patient. In other words, being connected where they feel your connection. They feel
Mhm,
that you feel them. You know them. You see them,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And even a tear to empathize is okay, but
mhm.
crying uncontrollably is that's different.
That's
That's now
scary.
you're in your own you're in your own pain now, and it's no longer about the client, but it's about you.
Yeah,
There's a difference between having being connected, that I see you and I feel your pain, and so there's tears shed from that, as opposed to I can't handle this, I am crying from my own pain. And so
yeah,
there's a happy medium there, right?
mhm,
There's a fine line. There's a
yeah,
fine line.
yeah.
Yeah.
What would be some advice you would give to people who are in that grief space? And not just with pregnancy loss or domestic violence, but just grief overall. Because again, like leaving a job, that's grief. Just there's grief.
Yes,
There's no
I
size.
know.
There's no size on grief. Just like trauma is trauma, like just like trauma, there's the big T's and little T's, but it's also like what is
Yes.
traumatic for you, the person. But
Yes.
what would
Yes.
be some advice you would give to someone who's, ready to kind of like face the music and be honest about, okay, I need to really take on my grief, like really take on this grief journey?
Yeah. First, I'd say be kind to yourself
Mhm.
and allow yourself to feel the pain. It will not overtake you. The reason we are afraid of feeling the pain is because we think it will overtake us. It will not overtake you. Um, and realize that grief looks different. Sometimes it's denial. Sometimes it's hysterical. You can be hysterically laughing, and you're like, "What is wrong with me?" You're grieving. Sometimes it's irrational anger.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just brain fog and forgetfulness. And the forgetfulness is part of your brain trying to help you, you know, not be overwhelmed. Um, but it looks different. So with each phase, just be kind and allow it. Allowing it and going through it is what I would say. Allow it and go through it, and don't judge it.
Yeah.
And don't look for it in any particular way, shape, or form. Just accept it all as it comes and realize that this could possibly be grief. I'm not aware of this as being grief, but this could possibly be grief. And look for a grief counselor. They can help you tell you that, yeah, that is grief. That does look like grief. And then you're like, okay, because what happens is you get anxiety because it's like, why am I feeling all these different things and what's happening here? Why I shouldn't be laughing because somebody just died. I must be this awful person because here I am hysterically laughing and this person died. You know,
Mhm.
no, you're not. It's all part of grief. It looks different and it comes in waves. And so be kind to yourself, um, and look for a grief therapist if it's too much, if it's complicated.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Miss Liz. This was healing for me. I like hopefully healing
Thank
for the
you.
masses too. But um thank you so so much for your healing, your journey, your wisdom, the work that you do, and just being open and authentic with us. I think even for people who, don't believe in God, I believe
Mhm.
that this is still bringing them to a place where, okay, even if I don't believe in quote unquote God, there's something bigger than me that is going to comfort me. So
Mhm.
thank you for just being you and being sweet and kind and just giving us these gems, giving us these gems. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
well, thank you for having me, Ashley. And I just pray that this just does what God wants it to do. It's a beautiful space. You're healing lots of people. And just thank you for using your pain to heal. You're a wounded healer. Thank you for using your wounds to heal others.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Yeah.
if you are, again, on the podcast page of ashleyelaine.me, you'll see all of our guests that have been on this month. Miss Liz is on there. Her website is also on there if you are in need of some grief counseling, coaching, all of the things. And there are other resources on there as well for miscarriage, pregnancy loss, and infant loss, as well as domestic violence. Again, keeping it national. I'm still looking for more national resources, but definitely tap into your local communities, your local agencies, and see what's available there. And we will be right back. One of my most favorite self care regimens is to take long baths. Like I've literally just redecorated my whole entire bathroom to bring home my own spa experience. One of my favorite things to add are body scrubs. CB Soap and Candle Co. have the most amazing body scrubs. Like they're made with pure love, so much love, leaving my legs and my body and just everything feeling so good, like pure silk. Like I've just renewed my whole entire body. Enjoy spa quality products in the comfort of your own home with CB Soap and Candle Co. Go to cbsoapandcandleco.com and use code VOTB, all caps, to get 10% off your order. So, my last order, which I need to order more, that I made was Cocoa Cashmere, which is like you want to go back into the black and white Hollywood films and feel like diamonds and pearls, like Coco Cashmere does that, at least for me. The smell is so like beautiful. Like the smell is gorgeous, and it's really like the smell is really really nice for that transition into the fall, right? Like that real grounding space, like a nice sandalwood. But my fave, which I wish I brought like thousands of them, was passion fruit, guava, and mint. I brought passion fruit, guava, and mint when like around the spring summertime, when we're in that nice transition from spring into summer. Sis, ma'am, sir, guy, all of y'all, passion fruit and guava. First of all, I love guava. I love guava. There's like this nice dance that the guava and mint do with like the passion fruit, and it's beautiful. It's refreshing. The mint is very refreshing, and then just the smell of fruit. It smells like fresh fruit with mint. Like your whole shower, your whole bathroom still smells like it afterwards. These scents are so authentic. You can feel the love and the time that was made in curating these products and how thoughtful the pairing is. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. So go to CB Soap and Co. Candle Co. Go to cbsoapandcandleco.com and use the code VOTB, all caps, to get 10% off your order.
Soundstripe.
Hey y'all. Y'all all right? Yes. I'm so grateful for that conversation with Miss Liz. I keep calling her Miss Liz because that's what I've known her. That's what I've called her for the last 10 years. But I think having a conversation about grief is important because people want to rush you through your healing, and grief is a huge part of your healing journey, right? It's probably the most prominent part because you're in a space where you're learning that what was and what I thought would be is no longer. And because change is inevitable, like grief is inevitable. So we have to allow ourselves the space. We have to allow other people the space to really ride those waves of grief. What's coming up, the good, the bad, the ugly, the anger, the sadness, the joy, the hysterical laughing, as Miss Liz mentioned, right? We have to really give ourselves grace and permission to allow those things to be. It's a biblical practice. It's a, if you look at Lamentations, Jeremiah lamented like the whole thing, and I studied Lamentations when I did a 5-day fast recently. So it's necessary, right? Even Jesus wept, right? Like tears are meant to be a space where we allow room and also confirm and release, the amount of love that we have within us for this other person that is no longer in our life, for that child that we were manifesting, right? For that job that we thought we were going to be at forever, for the life that we thought we were going to have. And like grief is okay. And if anybody tells you anything different, or tells you that you're being too emotional, they're not a part of your journey, right? Anybody that is giving you permission to stifle what you're feeling instead of giving you the space, the safe and sacred space to release it, should not be a part of your journey. They have their own healing work to do. So I hope this episode really blessed y'all and really allowed you all the space to give yourself grace and give yourself time to really
Soundstripe.
really be with you, right? And really connect to that higher power that you submit to. I love you all for free. Namaste.
Soundstripe.